Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to How Brands Win in Facebook's new Local First World. I'm Greg Sterling of the LSA, and I'm here with Monica, who's the CMO of SOCi, and we've got a ton of great information for you today. So after a couple of quick housekeeping comments, we're going to get right into it. You can ask questions at any point during the webinar today, and we will answer those at the end. We're going to push this out, the rebroadcast of this out to registered attendees within the next day or two. You can also access it on the LSA webinar archive. This is the copy of the page. Shameless plug for our next event, which is called the Place Conference. It's on location intelligence. It's going to be September 13th at the Grand Hyatt in New York. This is all about online to offline analytics, audience segmentation, stuff that you can do with location, competitive intelligence, business intelligence. It's a great event. These companies will be, these are past attendees. Many of these companies will be there presenting lots of case studies, lots of great information, so check that out. We've done a report with SOCi on a multi-location marketing, guide to multi-location brand marketing on Facebook, local pages, and corporate pages, which is what we're going to be talking about today. This report it goes into much more detail. It's going to be pushed out to registered attendees. You can also download it from this URL. So worth checking out. A lot of tactical information in there. So of course, we all know about Facebook's influence on the market, but we're going to go over that to sort of set the stage for Monica's tactical comments. So what we've got, as many of you know, is a kind of a situation where there's a corporate presence, and many brands are also now building out location pages, so pages for individual store locations. Although this is not a uniform strategy, though it should be. Notwithstanding all the recent sort of negative PR about Facebook, it's still a critical marketing channel. 241 million monthly users. It's capturing huge amounts of ad spending. This is a comparison with Google's monthly uniques from ComScore. And many of you already know how important and influential social media is on consumer purchase behavior. There's a bazillion of these studies, but this is just one of them that talks about roughly half of social media users are being influenced to buy something on a relatively regular basis, and Facebook is the dominant influence, and those numbers are larger for millennials. So what does this mean? This means really that Facebook is having a multi-trillion-dollar impact on purchase behavior. This is a 2015 stat talking about how more than half of consumers' purchases are being influenced in one form or another by information that they see on Facebook. It's $2.6 trillion. But as we're going to hear more today, and as the report goes into more detail, most of the action, most of the engagement, the consumer engagement, is on location pages versus brand pages. So this is SOCi data that they did compiled for this report that we did together. Excuse me. They looked at thousands of pages and compared corporate pages and local pages for the same brand. And what they saw, and Monica will perhaps elaborate a bit on this later, what they saw was that 72%, nearly three-quarters of engagement is happening on these local pages. So you're really missing out if you don't have a local page strategy, because a lot of that engagement may not be happening at all, potential engagement. This is another study that was from 2016, very, very similar numbers, and there are others that confirm this. Most of the consumer engagement with brands is happening on these local pages, and there are a variety of reasons for that, which we can talk about in a little bit. Another study from Gannett in 2014, Facebook is the most useful among these other social sites for local business research. And local business can include franchisees and local stores from national brands. So lots of consumers turning to Facebook as a trusted information source to find local business information. And what we at the LSA have found in our most recent local media tracking study is that consumers use Facebook to find this information. They search on Facebook for local business information, And so these numbers are not exactly right. They should be flipped. 55% in the past month used Facebook to find local business information, 44% in the past week, so high frequency. And then among those doing these local business searches, almost 40% making an actual purchase. We all know the story about reviews. More and more people, a large majority of online users, look at reviews before making a purchase decision. They trust them. Monica's going to talk about this in more detail. There's nothing new here, just to reaffirm the importance of reviews in the purchase journey, and that Facebook is really one of the primary sources of reviews for consumers. This is a Bright Local study that identified Facebook and Yelp as the two most trusted sources for consumer review information. So what we've got is massive reach, impact on offline purchase behavior, and Facebook as a source of review information. But what's also important that some people forget is that if you're talking about Facebook reviews, you're not just talking about Facebook, you're talking about Google local results as well, because Facebook is one of several sources that Google will highlight in its knowledge panels with this reviews information like this. So I'm now going to turn it over to Monica Ho, who's going to go into a lot of this in more detail and talk about tactics. And she's also going to lead off by talking about some of the recent changes that Facebook has made to local business pages.
Great. Thank you so much, Greg. And thank you to everyone that joined the webinar today. As Greg had mentioned, I really want to jump into how brands can manage an effective local and national strategy via Facebook. But before we jump into that content, I did think it was appropriate to cover the recent changes that Facebook just recently announced in the past couple of weeks that significantly impact these local business pages. And not only the local business pages, these changes really are around local reviews and recommendations in particular. So before we kind of go into the exact changes that happened, I wanted to first clarify what the difference is between a recommendation and a review as they existed in Facebook prior to this change. So recommendations are not something new. This is a feature that was launched by Facebook back in the fall of 2016. And it was a really great way for consumers to get recommendations from their network and extended network, whether it was, places to go, places to eat, recommendations on services. And Facebook launched this because they saw this consumer behavior happening already. And although consumers were getting that really valuable local recommendation information from their network, a lot of times people would just tell you who the business is, and then that person would have to go and search and find that business's contact information, etc. So when Facebook launched recommendations, they really launched a really cool utility that when somebody recommended a business name, and if that business had a local business page set up within Facebook, when they made that review, Facebook would automatically link that local business page to the recommendation so that that consumer who asked for the recommendations in the first place had a one-click way to get to that information. And there's a really great tab in Facebook that keeps all of those for you. So again, it's a really cool feature. You may have seen it before, may not. Regardless, a lot of consumers actually leverage this feature on a regular basis. And as a result of that, and the popularity of this feature, Facebook announced that they're actually going to be incorporating recommendations more throughout their site. In fact, what they're actually going to be doing is replacing the traditional Facebook review with recommendations, which kind of makes sense. When you think about Facebook and the type of conversations that are happening there, it's more natural for somebody to recommend a business versus the traditional review site where you go and you leave a star rating. So again, Facebook, based on all of the data that they see and all the behavior that they can analyze, is making this change. The change went into effect on August 6th. So now what's going to happen on these local business pages is instead of seeing, traditionally you would see almost like a news feed of comments and information about that local business. Instead now the main feed is being replaced with this new recommendations and reviews section. So they're making that information prominent and very easily accessible by a consumer. Again, a big reason for this change is that they know that consumers are typically looking for that type of information, and so they want to surface that and give it some priority. So this is what it's going to look like going forward. And the big reason why this is important for not just local businesses, but for brands that service consumers out of local agents, outlets, et cetera, is because, as Greg had mentioned in his earlier slides, Facebook has become a prominent destination for local business information. Not only search is increasing on these really powerful social properties, but consumers are turning to these properties for these reviews and recommendations. In fact, if you look at the growth of the number of reviews on Facebook over the past few years, they're seeing a 300% year-over-year increase in just the number of reviews being placed within Facebook local pages. And again, to reiterate some of the stats, 91% of consumers read reviews before they make purchases. That, in and of itself, should tell you why this is important. And 88% trust these reviews as much as personal recommendations. And at the local business level, when a consumer hasn't yet made the decision on which business to visit, it's becoming the #1 factor in determining that business over discounts and pricing, over convenience at the location. So a lot of you are probably thinking, especially those that have a lot of star ratings and reviews on Facebook, what's going to happen to those legacy reviews? Well, the good news is they're going to be converted into a recommendation. And although Facebook is not yet describing how they're coming up with the rating system, they are still keeping the 5-star rating. And the way that they're explaining this is that they'll factor a rating based on all of the different recommendations that the business receives. So as you can see here, this is a current local business page. You can see that they still have a star rating, 4.4 out of 5, based on 253 people that have recommended it. And these recommendations have a number of benefits for local businesses. First off, findability and visibility will be even easier than before, again, just based on the prominence that Facebook is giving this feature. The ease of use of leaving a recommendation is going to simply drive more and more recommendations across this property. So if you haven't yet tried this feature, when you go to a local business page, it will basically ask you if you recommend this business or not, and you simply answer yes or no. Once you answer that yes or no question, you will have the ability to leave a comment like you would any other comment you would leave on Facebook. Now Facebook is actually requiring you to leave a text comment before you can post that you recommend or not recommend a business, which is great. That's going to lead with more authentic feedback that consumers can leverage. I think something that's commonplace among reviews is spamming, where you might see a lot of reviews, but there's no commentary, and you really can't understand what was going on there. So now, with this forced feature, you will be able to get the commentary. In addition to that, Facebook has enabled local tagging, which is great. Basically, they're surfacing a number of different local tags associated with the business that you can quickly click on. And what this is simply allowing Facebook to do is surface the themes that emerge around your business. So what are you known for? Are you known for a good atmosphere, live music, etc.? And they'll start surfacing that information on the local business pages. And if that's not great enough, the other thing that that's going to do is it's going to allow you to come up in search results for those type of keywords as well, based on that local tagging. So again, a ton of really great benefits. On the very bottom of the slide here is the biggest benefit, though, which is the increased reach that this feature will now give your local business pages. So not only are they giving recommendations a prominent placement on the local pages, but they're making these highly discoverable across Facebook as people are searching and as people are having conversations about businesses. Very similar to how recommendations work in the past. So again, for those businesses that are leveraging local pages, that are continuing to see a good amount of organic recommendations coming through, this should definitely give you a bump and increase in your local brand engagement. So for those of you that might be on the phone that have chosen not to have a local strategy, or really maybe not even aware that you could be managing your local pages in addition to the national page, we wanted to talk a little bit about if you don't have local pages, you're not managing today, what's at stake, and really how can you fix it? So a lot of times I hear sometimes brands make a comment that, you know, oh, we don't have any local pages, or we don't see a lot of activity coming off of the local pages. And so I wanted to provide this chart. This is actually a benchmark of the top 20 retail and restaurant brands and an analysis of their top 100 locations that come up within Facebook. And the reason for this chart is simply to show the amount of activity on average that you're seeing on these pages. So obviously you're seeing that for restaurants and for retailers, you have a number of ratings and reviews that are already happening on these local pages. You see that there are other activities happening where people are checking in. The fan count just simply means that people are following that page, getting any of the local updates or information that gets posted there. And in addition, you see this other thing, which is claimed local pages. And I'll go into that in a second. But more, I wanted to speak to this to kind of showcase the fact that there are definitely lots of activities happening on these local pages. A lot of times, if you're seeing a lack of engagement, there's two primary factors for that. One, you're not managing them, so you're actually not seeing the activity. Again, I'll go over that in a second. And two, if you're not actively managing these pages and you don't have good content on the pages in terms of, you know, what's your business about and the reviews and local tagging, etc., a lot of times these pages won't come up in search results. And as you know, with any search result, coming up at top of search results is pretty key and will filter a ton of traffic to your pages. And so that's a common factor as well. And we'll go through both of those situations in greater detail. So to emphasize a point that Greg made before, when you look at how much local search is happening on Facebook, about 1 out of every 2 U.S. adults have conducted a local search via a social property like Facebook in the past week. And again, to reiterate some of the stats, 61% of those consumers went on to make a contact that business or make a visit, and then 83% of those searchers had intent to purchase. So lots of search activity going on there and a huge opportunity for brands to increase their reach and engagement. I spoke about this briefly just a few minutes ago, which is the local search that's happening within Facebook and the lack of certain brands coming up or being visible. So to kind of showcase this scenario, if you go to Facebook and you search, do a common search around your business, and don't even put any geo-modifiers in there. Like Google, Facebook has gotten very good about their search. They recognize search queries that have local intent, and then they'll surface up local results for you. So in this case, I looked for restaurants. Obviously near me, I live in Austin, there are a ton of national chains and restaurants that are near me, but unfortunately none of them come up, neither when I'm at my workplace or at home. And the reason for that, when you start to look at the results that are coming up, is because the local search results within these social properties really reward local engagement on these pages, right? So they're trying to surface what they think is going to be the most relevant to you. And the way that they're really addressing that is, you know, how engaged is this local business page when consumers come to it and have questions and comments? Do a lot of people recommend that location? And you see here on the right side, this is one of the big reasons why 24 Diner is getting such a high ranking. In fact, a really interesting feature that I just noticed in prepping for this webinar, when I came to this local business page, it popped up the messaging pane, and it said to me that this diner typically responds within a few hours if I had a question or a comment. So again, it's really kind of showcasing how Facebook is recognizing the type of activities that are happening on these local pages and really making it easy for that consumer to get what they need and make that purchase decision or transaction really, really easy. So again, let's just say that you're not sold. You have local businesses, but you're like, look, this is too painful. There's no way I'm going to have enough time to do this. The risk of not managing local pages is the fact that anyone with a Facebook account can go in and actually create an unofficial page around your business location. And to be honest, I don't know that a lot of consumers know that they might be doing this, but what happens is when a consumer is looking for a local business information, and let's say they're not using keywords, they're actually looking for your business. For instance, Dunkin' Donuts, Kansas City, Missouri, and they give an address or even, the street it's on. What Facebook will do is they have a lot of this local business information. They will serve up your listing and allow that person to, again, leave a recommendation, check in, etc. And even though a page doesn't exist, what it will do based on that activity is create a page where that information will now sit. And because that page was not already existing, it will become an unofficial page, as you can see here in this listing for Dunkin' Donuts. Obviously, you can see Dunkin' Donuts is doing a great job of managing local pages, but sometimes pages get created because consumers might have the wrong address, or maybe a new business had opened and they haven't created a page yet. So again, it requires some ongoing management to make sure you're catching these as they occur. Because again, if you leave these out here too long, it can lead to confusion, right? In the case of a wrong address, it can lead to content existing on these pages that are not within your brand guideline. And it could also result in consumers finding that page, thinking it is the business page, and leaving recommendations and comments that just go unattended to because the business is not aware of it. The good news is, in addition to making these pages easy to create, Facebook made it just as easy to claim them. So if you go out and you see that you have a number of these pages that are existing that are not yours, and you want to claim them so that you can either replace it with your official location pages or merge them into another page, you can do that by clicking on is this your business, and Facebook will walk you through a process to go about claiming these pages. So again, the good news is you can claim these pages. It's easy to do. And by actively managing these pages, again, there's a number of benefits for brands. We already covered in detail the increased brand engagement. In addition to that, you have control over the content that lives on this page now. And you can also see and participate in any of the conversations that are happening. The other great benefit that you get when you actually allow consumers to engage with your local pages is when you start to see what's happening in terms of the conversations and recommendations by location, and you start to look at the themes yourself, these could be early warning signs for the business if there are problems at the local level. If there's a customer service issue, if there's problems with something logistically within the store. So again, I think there's a number of benefits that the brand can take from managing these local pages. Another area I thought important to cover is the difference between corporate pages and local pages. Again, I think a common confusion that brands take here is, oh, well, I've already got our corporate page and we've got a lot of people engaging with us, and people are leaving comments, and that's fantastic. The corporate pages are essential to your strategy and your brand presence on sites like Facebook. However, there's a very important reason to have both pages because they're not mutually exclusive. They're actually very complementary. And I think some of the more savvy brands have done this really well, and we'll cover a few examples. So to give you some sense of how you might manage national and local pages together, when you look at a national page, I think it's a really great place to convey the overall brand image and offer a central voice for the brand. It's a really great way to talk about the values of your company and to reiterate that and emphasize that through the content and photos and information that your brand page is sharing. In addition to that, it's a really great place for general ideas and inspiration when it comes to the type of content that you're creating and placing onto those pages. In terms of the local pages, these are for more intimate and immediate conversations with your consumers at the local level. As you saw with the example I showed you with 24 Diner here in Austin, Facebook understands that sometimes consumers have questions. They have something that needs to be addressed quickly, and they want to start making sure that consumers get answers quickly to their questions or their concerns. And so just be aware of that. In addition to that, you can use these local pages to share local knowledge and your local voice. So again, your local outlets and stores are the best, are more tapped into the local community than ever. So when they're hosting local events or running local promotions, this is a place to put those and share with their local communities. In addition to being responsive to answer local questions and complaints as they occur. So to give you an example of how a brand can do this well, when you look at the Home Depot page, they have a fantastic corporate page, lots of engagement, and an active community that they're managing. As you can see, based on the type of post that Home Depot places on their corporate page, it has a central theme. So here they're talking about a product recall that applies across their different locations. They've put posts up regarding innovations that they're looking into within their stores. So again, you can see how their values and their themes are coming out through the content on the corporate page. Versus when you look at one of their local brand pages, again, you can see that the look and feel looks very much like corporate, but the content is very different. Again, this looks very different now that recommendations have taken over the main news feed. So you see these local recommendations and conversations prominent, and then right underneath all of that, you've got access to the community as well as quick access to local business information like address, store hours, etc. We talked about this in a lot of the examples about the fact that these local pages are becoming the destination for customer care, right? In regards to questions, concerns, comments about the local business and their experience. And this is not a new scenario. Social has become the new place for customer care, and it has been this place for the past couple of years. In fact, 70% of consumers now turn to social when they have a customer care issue versus going through the normal 800 line that a business might publicize or other ways that they can contact the business. And because these consumers are turning to social, they expect an immediate response. In fact, 47% of consumers actually expect a response to their complaints or questions within an hour, and 84% of consumers expect a response within 24 hours. So again, just showing what the expectation is. And, when you're talking about, these local comments and questions, they really require a local voice or local answers because sometimes it has to do with things that maybe only that store would know. Maybe it's about a local event. Maybe it's about inventory or customer service, right? So the best way to manage these pages is to enable your locations to help you manage this in addition to what you're doing on the corporate level. I think one of the things about coming up with these, what I should say is opening this up to the local business is concern that some of this information might not be handled appropriately by your local business. And sometimes that does happen. So as you can see here, an example of, a person that was unhappy with an experience they had at one of their locations, and they left a pretty thorough comment about their dissatisfaction, and a local business got back pretty quickly and, took a certain approach with responding, which again, reading this, as a business owner or as a consumer, you can see how this could turn into a pretty sensitive situation pretty quickly, not only because the consumer is upset, but because it's not only that business and that consumer seeing this conversation happen, but others that are actively involved with this community can see this conversation happening as well. So there is absolutely the risk of this happening. And again, I think when you're talking about local consumers and local employees, that there are definitely risks there. But before talking about, how you correct that, I do want to stress the rewards that come with enabling a local and a national strategy. And this one hopefully is pretty near and dear to a lot of your hearts, which is the decline in organic Facebook reach. It's been widely talked about for the past couple of years and has been talked about as a conspiracy that Facebook has to increase their ad spend, et cetera, et cetera. And all of that might be true, but the reality is it's supply and demand. And as more people and pages and ads compete for limited newsfeed attention, the percentage of your business followers who see your posts are naturally going to decline. And it's happening pretty significantly, right? I mean, I've seen studies which have shown that in one quarter alone, businesses have seen over a 50% drop in their reach in Facebook because of all of these things. But despite that drop in reach, it's such a significant platform when you look at the number of consumers still engaging and spending time there. And so we've got to find new ways to engage that audience and get that reach and engagement back. And some of these changes that Facebook is doing is their attempt at trying to do that in a really relevant and authentic way. So what they're essentially trying to do, if you look at some of these recent changes like the ones they just did with recommendations, is they're trying to make these local business pages a new destination for brand reach and engagement. So that when done right and you're managing these as part of your overall corporate strategy, these pages should not be an outlet to regurgitate a lot of your corporate marketing and messaging that you would typically put on your corporate page, but to provide a preferred destination for consumers to go to get a lot of that local business information and get their questions and comments responded to, right? And the stats at the bottom are just to reiterate the fact that, this is happening already by opening up these pages and allowing them to be managed and, managing these conversations. You're really just opening up that conversation and getting the benefit of the reach and engagement as well. So again, going back to this issue of, okay, yeah, if I let my local locations manage their local pages, oh my goodness, I'm going to have an issue because maybe they're not going to handle these conversations correctly. And the way that I think we need to be looking at this as marketers and as brands is proactive management is better than crisis management. And it's as simple as making sure that you're providing training to your local outlets. A lot of times your local outlets or your local stores have already activated these pages and they're already engaging ahead of you. Again, whether they're there yet or not, a good practice would be to put together a training, make sure all of your businesses are aware that this is happening, how they can engage, and provide them with training on the ways to respond and not respond to different situations that are happening on these local pages. Believe it or not, a lot of times you can address 90% of what would typically come up on these pages just based on the typical scenarios that you're already seeing on your corporate pages and maybe some of the local pages you have already, and what you're also seeing in store. So you could establish pre-approved responses that these locations can use that will handle most situations. As you can see here, this is a better way to handle an upset customer, and is a typical response I've been seeing across this brand. So it does look like it was a pre-approved response. It's professional. It helps direct that upset consumer to a place where they can explain in detail what happened and hopefully get their situation resolved. So again, I think there's easy ways to try and mitigate some of these risks in opening up and allowing your locations to be involved in managing these pages. And again, being prepared. So there will be sensitive issues that arise. And these things are going to happen regardless, whether they happen on your local pages or they don't find the local page, so then they go to another ratings and review site. So as a business, you really just need to be prepared. And the best way to do that is to be actively listening to the conversations that are happening on these big platforms. There's a lot of really great technologies out there that allow you to do this and allow you to, track keywords around your brand, any of your brand mentions, whether that's happening in places like recommendations or in social conversations themselves. A lot of that information can be aggregated so that you can see information, these type of conversations as they're happening. And even a lot of these technology platforms will inform you of the sentiment. Is it good or bad? And then you know how to respond, or if somebody needs to activate in your local community to address an issue, etc. And then building local brand and community ambassadors. Again, when we talk about allowing your locations to be involved in managing these pages, it doesn't mean everybody. I think a good practice is to pre-identify who will be responding on behalf of the brand. And again, makes training a lot easier. But pre-identifying, is it an employee? Is it a customer who's an ambassador for the brand? But who will be responding on behalf of the business, and making sure they're properly trained. The benefit of that, again, by having somebody local kind of piped into these conversations, they're going to be able to get back to these consumers more quickly and be able to provide a more authentic response in a timely manner, which is ideal. A lot of times it just can't happen, and we need to go to pre-approved responses, which is good as well. But there is a way to, again, mitigate the risk by pre-identifying employees, having them trained, etc. And then finally, make sure that you are constantly learning, building, and improving on that process. If there's one thing that is constant, is change, and you should plan for it. As we saw just in the beginning of this webinar, Facebook just made a big change to how they look at recommendations and reviews, and that's going to have an impact to the number of reviews your businesses are going to start seeing. And for those that are already managing their local pages, that requires a retraining and making sure your teams are understanding what's going on there. The same if a mistake happens, right? If a situation wasn't handled correctly, it's going to happen. But make those into case studies. Go back to them, learn from them, make sure that your employees and your staff are learning from them, and just continue to improve. I think the one thing about consumers is that they realize that not every business is perfect. And what's interesting is if you look at the most common research done around reviews and recommendations, consumers are looking for brands that have a mix of good and bad reviews, right? On average, 4 stars, not 5 stars. If consumers see 5-star reviews and a lot of reviews, they become suspect if those reviews are actually true, because they realize businesses might have issues now and again. And even negative responses. Again, I don't think consumers don't expect to see negative responses. I think what we've seen through the research is that even when consumers see a negative response, they're going to definitely give credit back to the business if, yes, they see the negative issue that happened, but if they see that business respond, it's going to definitely change their perception of the business. And in fact, we've seen about 1/3 of consumers who have left a bad response or a negative review on a business turn those reviews into a positive review after their situation had been handled. So again, lots of benefit there. And for those businesses that just think this is just too much to get done at scale, and there are lots of businesses that have hundreds, if not thousands, of locations in addition to their corporate page. So you're talking about not only the corporate page, but hundreds of thousands of local pages to manage, and that can become daunting. But the good news is there's lots of really great technology out there that can make that process very easy and efficient. One of those technologies is SOCi, which is a all-in-one platform that allows brands to manage their social and reputation in one dashboard. So you can see all of your reviews and conversations in real time. You can set up rules so that certain people within your business are receiving alerts and are being asked to respond to certain things. You can program it so that you can see the response before the response is posted, so some sort of brand or compliance review. So there's a lot of really great tools and technologies out there that make this task less daunting and a lot more efficient and effective for a national brand. That's really all of the content we've prepared today. We've tried to keep it as tight as we can, but of course, as Greg had mentioned, there is a lot of content within the report, a guide to Facebook marketing for multi-location brands. We will be providing a copy of this for your registration today.
Thanks everybody for joining us today. Thanks Monica for a terrific presentation. Look for the report, and if you're interested in coming to the PLACE conference in New York on September 13, check out the website placeconf.com, conf.com, and please join us. Thanks again, Monica, and you get a chance to say anything if you want to now.
Just thank you to all that attended, and please email me if you have any other questions. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.